Hello and welcome to Mistakes Were Made. We are at the dining room table and getting ready to do our next cash stuffing. If you are new to the channel, welcome. I hope you find something of interest. And if you're returning, welcome back. It'll probably be a little bit of the more of the same, but there's something to be said about repetition. We do not change very much with our cash stuffings. We have a pretty static number of categories that we cover and put into cash. The only variation really is when in the month does it get stuffed. And so we'll have things that'll get stuffed during the first pay period, which is what we're working on right now, May 1st through the 15th. Some that are during the second pay period, which will be the 16th through the 31st, and some that span both. So let's get started and see what we're working with today. We got $100, $200, $300, $50, $400, $20, $40, $60, $80, $500, $20, $40. So we're at $540, $550, $60, $70, $80, $90, $590, $95, $600, oops, and $5, $610, and then $2, so $612. We do try and keep the cost of things fairly equal between the 2 months, and the number of categories we have that we are funding is pretty equal between the 2 pay periods. I said the 2 months before, I meant 2 pay periods. So there's 12 categories that we fund during the first pay period and 12 during the second. The dollar amounts, they shift just slightly between the two, but for the most part, they're relatively even is what I'll say. All right, let's get going. So first one is AAA. We do not fund this, but I did have a question in the comments that somebody asked, what is AAA? For those who aren't familiar, I believe it's a travel club and it's something that's been around for ages. And honestly, the only reason that I joined was it was kind of the thing that you do, at least back when I was younger. My parents both have AAA, and it was one of those services that, if you ran out of gas, you could call AAA and they could come help you. If your car wouldn't start, they could come and jump your car, things like that. So presumably, it's a safer option than waiting for somebody to necessarily stop and help you on the side of the road. I have been in 2 car accidents, one which was my fault, one which was not, and in both cases it was AAA that I ended up calling to take my car to a safer place than where it was. When we were younger, we did a fair amount of road trips because my siblings and I were all into sports, so not just during school, but we were in various sports clubs. So during the summer, there were a lot of trips to go to swim meets and soccer games and things like that. And in the event that a team happened to make it further than, the standard level, so we were going to state or regional or nationals, then typically we would go there via road trip. And it was pretty normal for mom to go get some traveler's checks, which I'll be honest, I don't know if anybody does traveler's checks anymore. And then we would swing by the AAA office, go get the books for the states that we were going to be in so that we could see, where different hotels, motels, restaurants, and you could see, what they were rated, both quality and cost. And they had things about, good places to go and visit, for things to do. So it was an all-around service. I think some of the benefits that it offers have been mimicked by other things. You can get lots of towing packages and stuff like that from your car insurance and from I think from credit cards and stuff like that too. So I don't know if as many people partake in AAA or not, but I like them. It's something I'm used to. So that's what AAA is. Okay. We'll move on because we're not filling that one. So next is birthdays, which we are also not filling this month or this pay period. I'm going to have problems with that, I can tell. Car maintenance, however, we are going to be funding, and it gets $100. So we will see where we are for that. We've got 100, 200, 300, 20, 40, 60, 85, 95. Okay. So note down here. Today is Cinco de Mayo. I'm pretty sure I said 495. 100, 200, 300, 20, 40, 60, 80. Wait a minute. 100, 200, 300, 20, 40, 60, 80. Oh, okay. So I did not say 4. I said 3. So let's fix that. It'll just have to be ugly. So as you guys know, if you've watched some of our videos, we recently took my car in for its standard maintenance, and they wanted 700 and something dollars. I want to say it was almost $800 to change the cabin air filter and the engine air filter. We were able to do it ourselves for the engine air filter. So the next thing for car maintenance for me is to look up and see if I can find a video that shows how to do it specifically for my make and model. If not, then I'll check, the books that come with the car. And Mr. M will hopefully help with that as well, because assuming we break it in half, and it was about, $350 to $380 for each item to do, then we will potentially save like $300, because I think the cabin or the engine air filter ended up being, I want to say, about $24. It wasn't any more than $25. So right there, ridiculous amount of savings, because the labor that they quoted was $500. So at least 200 and whatever it was dollars was just for the filters. So yeah, it was eye-opening and annoying. So Christmas gets $12. And I am not a handy person especially where cars are concerned. So it's definitely outside my wheelhouse, but if there are things that are easy that I can do to save money, I will be embracing those. All right, so we've got 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 10, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32. I have 132. I really need to trim this down, consolidate it, I guess, so we don't have quite so many ones, but we'll worry about that later. Clothing, we do not do this pay period. Dine Out gets $50. So, oh no. All right, come on. You're on camera. Do it right. There you go. Okay. Entertainment also gets 50. Oopsie. Let's not go overboard there. And as you notice, both Dine Out and Entertainment were bone dry doing this refresh. Now, if there had been any money left over from the previous month, that would go into our miscellaneous and probably be used for to bulk up our newest long-term savings goal item, which if you saw our budget with me, you know it's the junk removal. But as you can tell, we are definitely doing entertainment things, so it's not all, sitting at home, twiddling our thumbs, looking at the walls here. We are spending money on ourselves to go out and do things that are fun. We try to keep it as, cheap as possible, so the biggest bulk of cost usually is gas for a lot of our things. So if we're driving to the coast, for example, which for us is about an hour and a half drive. Same thing if we're going to go up to the mountains. We like to do a lot of things out in nature, do, hiking, things like that. It's a beautiful, beautiful state. So there's a lot of options for things like that. We do try to bring our own food, make sandwiches and things like that to help with the cost of food, since we all know that is very expensive these days. But, I don't want anyone thinking just because we have pulled back on our spending and, of course, not using our credit cards, and we're doing everything that we can to have a decent amount of money left over that's unallocated so that we can put it towards debt, and we are seeing some success with that we aren't also indulging ourselves in a reasonable manner, because we are. Okay, entertainment. Garden and Yard is going to get $25. And this thing has been pretty empty since we were funding getting started in the garden for the year, so we will start to see this bulk up because we do still have money left over from that whole longer term goal. We did go to the nursery though on Friday because we had talked a little bit about getting some more apple trees. The apple tree that we have currently, we're not entirely sure what's wrong with it. It sort of put out flowers, and now it's looking really, really ratchet. Some of the varieties are showing leaves. We're not really seeing anything that looks like a little fruit bulb, so that you can see that the apples have started. It's not looking good. It is a tree that has 4 different varieties on it, so we've really enjoyed the fact that we've had that. We don't know if this is going to be a, hey, you're going to have a bad year where you don't really get anything, which, that happens, but it's looking rough. And so we wanted to make sure we're looking towards the future just in case this isn't a one-time thing. And because we are in an urban area, our garden is an urban garden, we do have a decent amount of room. We are on not quite half of an acre, so our backyard has a good amount of space that we use for gardening. It's not the entirety of it, of course. So our thought was to get some espalier trees. And if you're not familiar with those, I'll use this. They're trees that the branches, here's the trunk, are like this, and so you have to have a post, oopsie, here and here, and then you have some wire that helps them stay, straight and not go up and down, and so that makes them really narrow as far as how three-dimensional they are, plus you don't have all the height. But you can get some decent fruiting on there because I guess the way it was explained to me is the trees, if the branches are going up, they're looking for growth and things like that. If they're going sideways, they're looking to produce. So if you have most of it going sideways, then you will hopefully have a lot of production. So we were thinking about, would it make sense to put something like that in the garden, at least nearby, because we already have multiple fruit trees in our yard. We've got a couple of plum trees in the main area of the yard. We've got a cocktail tree that we planted when we first moved in, and we were not wise in where we put it. So we have a lot of really established, tall, old, evergreen trees. I don't know exactly what kind they are. Some kind of pine tree, but basically it ends up being very, very shaded in that area. So that poor tree, it hasn't had the full sun that it really needed to grow and be vigorous. So it's done its best, and I'll be honest, we've had multiple years where we got peaches off of it, which is something to say, being in Oregon. The plums that are on that tree, we've had off and on for a couple of years, but we've had just as many, if not more, where there was no fruit whatsoever. This year's looking like it could be okay if the fruit matures. Last year we had some, and I don't know what was going on with it, but it was definitely not edible. But anyway, bottom line is we have a good number of fruit trees already, and so finding a place to put a fruit tree is an issue because we don't want to use up all of the backyard area and space. We want places for people to be able to do stuff, the dogs to run around and things like that. So that's why the espalier format of tree kind of made a little bit of sense. The other thing we looked at once we got there, because the options were a little limited, and granted, we were there in May, so they typically get their fruit trees, early spring. We also looked at columnar apples, which basically means the apple is, again, still fairly skinny, and then it just goes straight up for, I don't know if they're more dwarf, so maybe 10 feet tall or less or something like that. They had a few varieties of that, and we really thought hard about whether we wanted to purchase them. They were kind of expensive as well. So the thought on those is you can keep them in a container, so maybe we could just buy a big, huge pot to put them in so it has, some room for growth, and then we can just put them on the corners of our garden area, and then, voila, we've got some apples. What we decided was we're going to think about it a little bit longer. Do we really want the espalier? Do we want the columns? Do we want a mixture of both? What's going to be the best option? And we will come to a decision next year, and potentially we'll use at least part of this year to save up money specifically to purchase some combination of those, because they were not cheap, as I was saying. I want to say the columnar ones were a little less expensive. I think they were like $50 to $60 each, and then the espaliers, I want to say, were like $100 each. So, a decent monetary investment, especially if you're trying to be budget conscious. But if they grow and do well, then fresh fruit going into the years. Mr. M very much enjoys making hard cider every year, so we'll probably do that this year again. Even though our trees don't do very well, they very much like us at Kiyakawa Farms in Oregon. I really like that farm. But anyway, I have been on this topic long enough. $25 for garden yard the beginning savings options for hopefully some sort of fruit trees, apple fruit trees next year. Alrighty, so this gas we do fund each, oops, I don't want to do that. Each pay period. And it is another one that if there's leftover would go to, a savings challenge or miscellaneous or whatever. Gas has been a bajillion dollars. I think it was $4.65 when we went and got gas last. So having leftover hasn't been the case recently. I know it's different in other areas, so I'm curious, is your gas also in the fours, in the high fours, more than that? And if not, where are you located? I mean, I don't think we'll ever be moving, but it's always interesting to me where our gas might be $4 a gallon, and then somebody else elsewhere is like, oh yeah, it was like $2.89, and I was like, oh, I wish so much. Gifts, we do not fund. Giving, we do fund. It gets $5. Okay, so I'm doing awkward writing here to reach around this little stand for the to hold my cell phone. My setup is very rudimentary. It's very awkward. I am not super splashy, I'm afraid. So, yeah, you can see it's very humble, but it works. It works, and as long as people don't mind the little bit of view behind the camera, I'm not gonna worry about it anyway. And I'll be honest, even if you did mind, I don't see any reason for me to spend extra money so you can't see this. So I'm sorry if that hurts anybody's feelings, but grocery gets $200. This is another one where we haven't had a lot of leftover, and not because necessarily we've spent the entirety of the $100, or in some cases over, though that has come up a couple of times recently as well, but because there have been situations where we needed to make a purchase and what we did have saved wasn't quite enough to cover that. So because we had leftover and extra in one or multiple areas that we don't roll over, we just ended up using that to augment. For example, I finally had to give in and buy new tennis shoes. There are a style of Champion tennis shoes. They're like black and pink. Pink is not my favorite color, but that's neither here nor there. I really, really like those. And I used to go and buy them at Payless or Volume, depending on, where you are. And they were a decently reasonable price. I knew the exact size that I needed. They worked perfectly. So either I could just go in and grab some and go, or the last time that we went, but right before Payless closed, I bought 3 pairs. Good thing I did, because they've lasted for quite some time. But my very last pair, which I do still have 2 that are wearable, they haven't completely fallen apart, but my feet get wet if I'm outside in the garden, and if there's something that I don't like, it is wet, soggy socks on my feet. So I finally had to give in and go and purchase some new shoes, which is not a fun experience for me because I do have larger feet. I wear a size supposedly technically 10, but I'm finding more and more often I need an 11. So it was a little bit of an annoyance, but shoes are so expensive too. So the $15 that we had in clothing was not enough to cover the shoes that I had to purchase, so we did use some of groceries extra and of something else, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. All right, that is grocery. Health gets $10. So we have $20, $30, $45 in there. Some people may consider it a bit of a failure if you have to, crack into other savings areas to cover a purchase. We don't look at it that way. I mean, in the long run, basically these are all just mini savings buckets. And if the end result is we're not creating debt, and for us, if the end result is we're not touching the leftover money that's unallocated at the end of the pay period any more than we need to, that's a win. If we have to delve into there, obviously, you do what you have to do. But with the idea that when the job goes away, there won't be that extra, I would much rather we utilize what we have saved than go the other route, get into the habit of using what we have already in place. Now, certainly if an expense comes up that fits in that category and we have reduced it to pay something else, then that creates a little bit of a domino or ripple effect, so you got to be careful about that. But I also think we've been a little light on the amounts that we are funding some of these when you look at the reality of costs. So we've probably put ourselves in a bit of a position because of that. For now, we'll keep things as is, but the goal will be once the job goes away and I find a new one and we know kind of what the lay of the land is at that point, we can definitely do some reassessing and figure out what budgeting changes we need to make, whether that's reducing costs in some areas or better or more accurately accounting for costs in others. I don't feel comfortable with us doing that now simply because we don't know what the landscape is going to look like in the future, and we've got a pretty decent budget even with its imperfections. So it just makes sense for now to kind of stay the course and wait to make any changes. Okay. Household is going to get 25. So this one previously got a little bit rated as well with the furniture plans for the recliner, but we have met our goal for that, and so we do not need any more money coming out of here, so we can bulk that back up. Licenses gets $15. And this is one I really need to figure out what I did with my birth certificate so that I can get my real ID doohickey when I renew the license. And I'm pretty sure I have whatever it was I sent to get my passport many years ago, and hopefully that'll be enough for the DMV, but we'll have to wait and see. So we've got 50, 70, 80, 95, 96, 97, 98, $99. And I think I mentioned the last time, we have already saved enough for a standard license plus the real ID. I'm trying to bulk this up just a little bit to get the equivalent of the doubling of the actual just generic license renewal fee, just in case I do have the opportunity to get it renewed for 8 years versus 4 years, and the assumption that it will cost twice as much. The website does not really say anything about that, so we'll see. Okay, Miscellaneous doesn't have anything. Pets, we do not do this pay period. Prime, we do not do this pay period. And then the savings, this is part of the savings for when the job goes away. We decided we were only going to keep $500 in cash. The rest is in the bank, so there's no more additions to that. Taxes gets the last $20. And we're at 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, 20, 35, 36, 37. Okay. 137. I'll have to go and take a look at my master spreadsheet to see if we are on track to save what I am anticipating and calculating I'll need for taxes for my Etsy shop or not. Income from that has been kind of sporadic, so we could be trending a little light, and if so, then we might have to make some adjustments, but I'll have to double check that. All right, so the last item on board is this guy. So believe it or not, this used to be our recliner envelope. As you can see, it does not have its sticker on it or its tape on it, nor is there any money. And that is because Mr. M did find a recliner that he decided to purchase. And yes, we did not give enough time to see any Memorial Day sales, but he actually found it at Fred Meyer's. He found one that he liked. It was $300. And then while he was there, he was searching around and he found a different one that he actually liked a little bit more. That one was $360. So he went ahead and purchased it. He was very excited and sent me photos. I was like, well, if that's what you want, it's under the amount that we saved for it. So he did purchase that, and so that means we are able to move on to the junk removal, dump long-term goal, and we took what was left from there minus $15, that also went to my shoes, to start our progress on this. So we did transfer what was left over to get going here. So we've got 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, 20, 30, 40, 50, $150. That means we need to get another $350 to meet the $500 goal. We are still hemming and hawing on whether that goal is static or if we should actually bump it up to $750. For now, we'll wait until we actually meet that goal and then make a decision at that point. This is getting funded by the twice a month savings transfer, auto savings transfer that we have had in place forever. Previously, we funded the garden thing with it. Now that's going to be used for the junk removal. So each month we'll be able to add $200 to this. So it shouldn't take too long to get to our main goal and then be able to do our reassessment. The other thing is we need to make a decision if we're going to do the same thing that we did for the garden, and if there is any leftover for the items that we refresh per pay period or each month rather than rolling them over. if we want to do a savings challenge with that money to bulk this up as well. Haven't really decided, and if we do, then I'll probably want to go in Canva and make something new for this one, but we'll see. So that was the, little bit of an extra announcement is Mr. M does have his new recliner. He was using it last night. He very much likes it. And now it's just a matter of keeping the dogs off of it so that it stays in good repair. It's going to be interesting because once we are able to fund the junk removal, one of the things we are going to get rid of is that broken down stinky couch that the dogs use to lounge around in. So they're probably not going to be too thrilled about that when that comes around, but it is what it is. All right, so that is our cash stuffing for the first pay period of May, $612. I'll put into their appropriate categories. If you have any questions, suggestions, or ideas, please note those down below. And as always, we'd absolutely love it if you would decide to like and subscribe if this is something that you would like to see more of or keep track of how things are going for us. And we do try our best to acknowledge and reply in some way to all commenters. Yeah. Well, we're at 36 minutes. I'm not going to apologize anymore. A bunch of you told me, hey, we don't mind your ramble, and if we do, we can fast forward and stuff. So I will leave it at that, and I will just say thank you so much for spending the time with me. I hope you've had a marvelous weekend, day, evening, whatever time it is, where you are, and when you are, and all of that stuff. So thank you very much. See you in the next one.